Hello, everyone. My name is Carol. I'm an author, a healer, and a fairy whisperer. And I work with Morgen and the Fairy Sisters of Avalon. And I want to welcome you to my YouTube channel. I'm really happy today to talk about a topic that the fairies have wanted me to discuss for some time. About dark fairies, and what better time to discuss this than with the release of the new Maleficent film. And I'm just wondering how many people have actually, seen it. I know people are just signing on right now, so if you get a chance, if you've seen it, let me know. I was really, really blessed to see it yesterday and just blown away as I was with the first one. It's a very magical series, but they get many, many things right, which is exciting, and they have a huge myth involved with that whole series, which I have to dispel today. So I think what Morgen would like me to do is to start with basically what is a fairy. And I know for many people, if you've been on my channel for a long time, you're like, oh, we know this, but we need to go through this very quickly right now so that, the people that are new, that are coming in, understand when I start comparing, between dark fairy and what fairies, as we traditionally study here on this channel are. So a fairy is a guardian sent by the divine, and depending on how you look at the divine, it can be source, creator, but they're sent to act as a guardian to an animal, plant, flower, rock, tree. And this is their divine, task that they're set forth to do. They're aligned to each of the elements, earth, air, water, and fire. And so this is something very, very sacred to them. Now, the next thing that Morgen wants me to mention is that they are energy beings. So when you think about Maleficent and the whole series, there is no way that a fairy can be affected by iron or cold metal, ever. It just can't happen. They are energy beings. They don't have a form until they decide to take one. So she wants me right now to go into that about what happens when they take form. A fairy, you may remember, will scan you when they meet you. And according to what they see in you and what you're anticipating, that is how the fairy will present itself. So for instance, if there is someone that is thinking about fairies and all they know is the doctrine that has been fed them, perhaps through industry and organized religion, then they might have a very dark perspective of a fairy. And this is where the whole ideas of dark fairies can come from, although we're going to go into more and more actually where they are from. So if a person is anticipating something dark and scary, that is how the fairy can manifest. And I think most people on this channel are aware this is a spiritual principle. If you are going out and anticipating, it can be connecting with the fairy realm, it can be connecting with the angelics or even a galactic. If you are anticipating something scary, that is how it will manifest because of the spiritual principle of manifestation. And so you need to be calm about this when you're wanting to think about, asking a fairy to manifest for you. And once again, I know many of you are aware of this, but if you're not, if this is new to you, you really do need to put forth an idea of a positive, a beautiful creature of light that is looking after an animal, a plant, a flower, a rock, a tree. And that is how the fairy will manifest. Now, Morgen also wants me to pause for a moment because it's not just Maleficent that has the dark, cast to her persona. Morgen herself, through literature and through movies and TV series, really has become a dark, dark fae. And it is funny to me because I work so closely with her. She is her IMI so often. I mean, it's just amazing. So what has happened, and I'll go through this again, and some of you might have already heard this from the channel, and once again, this might be new. For Morgen, it was in the early days when the Celts, used to just write down their myths and their legends. The legend of Morgen of Avalon, or Morgen Le Fay, which is Morgen of the Fairies, began where she was King Arthur's healer and his love, and what they called the goddess of Avalon. So her true title is Fairy Goddess of Avalon. And as it was translated by monks into the first literature, this was Geoffrey of Monmouth that did the first piece of literature, and then it was translated into English. He wrote in Latin, I believe. The monks saw a beautiful woman that was magical, and they decided to make her dark. And this is how Morgen's darkening started. And of course, with Maleficent, she began, when Disney started the whole series, they needed a dark fae to create, the spell that was cast on Aurora. And this is how it started with her. Now, the magical thing that's happened with Disney and with authors like myself who have gone on to write about Morgen and bring these beings back into the light is that we're showing that there is a light and a dark to all beings. And I think we're all aware of this. So there is in any fairy that you approach a very light side. And yet, if you remember, fairies have egos. So what does that tell you? They're like us. And they can be offended. Once again, you can see this very clearly in the Maleficent series, and this is how they're magnificent, and the way they write the series in many, many ways. But, if a fairy is offended, then you have to be very, very careful and write that immediately. Because the fairy is so focused on doing what the divine has sent them to do, that if, for instance, the animal that they're, being a guardian to, someone is abusing that animal, then that fairy will take great action, whatever they deem necessary, to wake the person up who is abusing the animal. They want me to give an example, and I have done this before on this channel, and this is not to upset people, but this is the one that I've been given over and over again. A dog was being abused, and the way they've shown this to me, the dog was literally being hung by the neck on its leash when the owner would go out, and it would be left hanging there until the owner came home. And the fairies decided to go to work to wake this person up. And it basically, from what I understand, had to do with a car and the person getting into an accident with another car. And you can say, well, how can a fairy do that? What right would they have to do that? Well, if you remember, the fairy is working on behalf of the divine to wake the person up. I'm not saying it's right for the fairy to create an accident, but if the ego is coming in, how many of us at one point have felt, oh my gosh, I'm so angry at that person, I could, do something that would be so uncharacteristic of you. That is the best way that Morgen gives me to explain it. I hope that is making sense. Okay, I'm just checking in to see what we have on the chat right now. If anyone has questions right now, about the film, if you saw it yesterday and you're wondering, how much of that is true, the part where the fairies, the dark fairies, are separate from other fairy kind is 100% true. This, as Morgen gives it to me, and she wants me to go back into fairy doctrine to explain it. So if you remember, back in the earliest days of time, you had, the flora, the fauna, each being entities that were speaking, communicating telepathically, the fairies being sent by the divine as a third entity coming in to communicate as their guardians, then humankind coming in, and all four were communicating telepathically. And so you had very wonderful relationships going on between all four, you can call them kingdoms, back in that time frame. Now, fairies who could see into the future had the ability to see that humankind had the possibility for creating war. And so this is how Avalon was created. They saw this, they decided, we're going to create a realm that will house a mystery school that will teach humans that they are intimately connected to animals, plants, flowers, rocks, trees, all aspects of nature, as well as the divine. We're all one. And that was Avalon's reason for being, along with keeping the peace. All right, now what they're wanting me now to do is shoot back to what's happening on Earth at this time. At this time, you had the beginnings of industry and the concept of time, which fairies, I think you're all aware, do not have a concept of time. And so this became very difficult for the fairies to communicate with humans. And so you had at that point a little bit of movement away from two groups that had been very, very close. Then you had organized religion come in, and anything that was not of what they deemed divine was then looked on as evil. And this is where the terrible mockery of fairies began. And you see this once again very clearly in the Maleficent series, how the people basically look on the folk of the Moors as being separate from them and evil and wicked. And so, we don't cross into there, unless we're doing very sneakily. And then we know we can get into all kinds of trouble if we do. So this is what was happening back in this time period. And people and fairies, especially earth fairies, there had been intimate relationships back in that time period between people and certain, especially earth elementals. And this, once again, you can see this in my Morgen of Avalon series, which once again was channeled to me from Morgen. And there was a relationship between King Arthur and Morgan Le Fay. And so that's one example. You have other wonderful authors, such as J.R.R. Tolkien, who had Aragorn and Arwen. All of these are coming from beautiful instances that happened back in the early phases of this earth. But when the mockery began, the fairies started to separate. They didn't want to be near humans at this point. And so you see, and they're showing me the fire fae going up into the sun and into the molten lava, the air fairies seeking refuge in the air, the water fairies in the water, but the earth fairies had to stay in the earth. But as they became more and more abused by mankind, this is where you truly get the dark fairies beginning. And this is the earth fairies going deep into the earth. In Maleficent, they're going into this, I would call it almost an Avalon kind of place that is separate from humankind, where the dark fairies are living. In reality, on this earth plane, deep into the earth, away from humans, traditionally these are trolls, these are gnomes, these are dwarves that have decided to separate themselves from the humans and make their livings down in their element. And so when they do manifest, they do take on the colors of the earth. And so they are very dark. And the first person that I ever heard talk about this is one of my early teachers. This is before I studied with Doreen Virtue. This was Ted Andrews. And I'm sure some of you may know Ted and may have known Ted, may be aware of his teachings. But he talks about these dark fairies and how the energies associated with them are of a much darker tone. This doesn't mean that they're evil. It just is a darker sensation to the energy itself than, say, a flower fairy. And I'm sure this makes sense to you if you think about it. Flower fairies are very much like this, vibrating extremely high, whereas a dark fairy would have taken on more of the darker earth qualities, and also through ego might be harboring anger and hurt against those who have mocked them. And this is a very, very good explanation of what a dark fairy is. Now, Morgen is reminding me, this is another teaching of Ted Andrews, that dark fairies would still then come and live among us. So for instance, and this is very amusing, if you find when you go downstairs, and if you have a basement, and you're downstairs and there is a feeling that as you go down those steps, there is something underneath those steps, Andrews always used to say, that is your dark fairy, and most particularly a dark dwarf that has taken up residence in your home. And I'm just wondering if any, people here that are listening, have ever come across that or had that sensation of eyes following you down those steps. Quite often, that is a dark fairy that has taken up residence in your basement area. These can also be, Morgen and the sisters are bringing through, even brownies that take up residence in the home, although they don't tend to get that dark an energy. Now, another thing they want me to bring up, and this is a huge part of the Maleficent series, is a war between fairy kind and humankind. No, this does not really occur. The best way to look at that is fairies are so consumed with doing their life purpose, which is being the guardian. Well, all right, they want me to remind you there are several different types of fairies. Most fairies are guardians. Others are teachers, such as the sisters of Morgen. Others are fairy patrons or fairy godmothers. These are all the different kinds of fairies. There also are fairy goddesses. Of course, Morgen is in that realm. But they each have their tasks they're doing, and they're not concerned with war. In fact, especially the fairies from Avalon are here to, do away with war. They are peace weavers. So I hope that makes sense. The series Maleficent, it's very, very fantastic. And, this is what, people expect when they're going to the cinema to see this war between, the fairies and the humans. But it seriously is not true. There are not dark fairies out there waiting to wage war on humankind. There just aren't. And anyone that is putting their thoughts in that line are doing a disservice to fairies. So just truly be aware of that. Now they have something else coming through right now. They're just wanting to really, really talk more about a fairy and its ego. So they want me to give examples of how a fairy can be offended. And of course, if you've already seen the second Maleficent, you know that, and I hope I'm not doing too much of a disclaimer here because it won't give the whole story away, but if you haven't seen it. But Maleficent is called to go with her adoptive daughter, Aurora, into the prince's castle. And it's the prince's mother, Queen Ingrid, that basically has set up Maleficent for a downfall and basically offends her on purpose. There are multiple offenses in this, but suffice it to say, anytime a fairy would be lured into a situation where they would be mocked, would be grounds number one for an offense. So this is not something anyone would ever want to do, I'm sure, on this channel, but it's just something to be aware of. Also, fairies can be offended when a person is not mindful when they're out in nature and throwing cigarette butts or garbage, just littering in particular, things like that. And then they have to go to the humans that are very mindful and then ask them to do the picking up. I know I'm part of that force, and I'm sure many of you are as well. But, just be aware. They're wanting me to show something as simple as a gift from a fairy that is not recognized. For instance, if a fairy is gifting you with something like a rock, a flower, a twig, a stick, the proper etiquette, is to pick it up. They want me to, show you the example of the hawk's feather here. And if by chance you know that this is a gift being given to you by the fairy realm, but instead you decide to simply say, and step on it and go on your way, that would be a great offense. The same thing with a rock. If it rolls into your path and you simply say, I'm too busy, next time, that would be an offense. So it would be using common sense. Something gifted to you that is filled with magic, like a rock that rolls into your path or a feather that literally plops down in front of you. Pick it up, and if you can't use that moment to connect with the fairy that gifted it to you, do so at a later time. They're also saying the idea of the fairy ring. As we know, this is a very sacred area of the fairies. And if someone were to knowingly step into it and ruin the magical configuration of it, that would be offensive. There are little children who I'm sure you've seen who like to attack mushrooms that are a fairy circle and they kick the heads off. The child is unknowingly doing something, so it's not that the fairy would take action against them, but they might whisper in their ear and say, enough, and give them a little, what was that, So I hope these are giving you ideas on how a fairy could be offended and how some dark, kind of fairy ideas might be lingering in people's minds about some of the things that might offend fairies. I'm asking them if there are any other examples they want me to bring up from the film right now. The idea of fairies dying because of cold metal or iron. Now, we talked about this at the beginning a little, but a fairy cannot be killed by cold iron or metal. Fairies literally are immortal unless, here are the unlesses, earth fairies can be killed by fire and do have a limited lifespan, although it is longer than ours. Water fairies also have a limited lifespan, but neither of them can be killed by something like a metal or iron. Certainly not if it's being thrown at them or a powder coming from that. They wouldn't dissolve back into a flower if they're a flower fairy. So these are important things that they wanted me to bring up in regards to what you see in the Maleficent series. But once again, on the other hand, I was just so, my heart was singing when I saw them bring in the Dark Fairies as its own separate kingdom. And it was a place where you had both the light and the dark occurring, because you had, in that Maleficent world, those dark fairies that wanted to strike back at humankind. And then, of course, the light fairies that are very much about peace. So that was very beautifully rendered right there, showing the light and dark in everyone, and how the dark fairies are traditionally separate from the rest of fairy kind. All right. I love it. You're picking up some trash today, Moonlight Awakening. Bless you for that. And the fairies are applauding that. Good for you. All right. Now, other things they wanted me to do. Love to you too, dear one. They wanted me to do this last week, and I literally sat here for like an hour and a half trying to get onto YouTube and could not get on. Oh my gosh, for a full moon reading. So they want me to just give you an overall fairy reading for the rest of October, because I think for most of us, oh my goodness, this has been a month where we have been tested and challenged to the core. And that doesn't mean that we're not sailing through it, especially if you're staying in that higher place. But it really has been challenging. And so they wanted me to do this fairy card reading for you. And I shuffled the cards ahead of time before I started recording. But the first one that came up is this, and this is from Doreen Virtue's magical fairy deck. And I still work with Doreen, her cards. I know she no longer, believes that fairies are beings of light, but her cards are still very magical. And she was my teacher at one time. Oh, I'm so glad you're excited about it, Holistic Plan 21. Wait till you see the movie. It is fantastic. My heart did weep, though, I had to say, at the places where they are dispelling the myth about cold iron and fairies, but everything else, it was just beautiful. All right, so here is the first card, and it is everything is okay. And I hope you can see that. I see the light reflecting on it. It's a beautiful fairy with her hands up, just letting you know that no matter what is going on in your life right now, the divine, your guides, your higher self, the angels, the fairies have your back. We are all working together right now to effect this incredible change during this transition to fifth dimension. And so many people don't understand that the fairies are playing such a huge role in this. We could not be creating this fifth dimensional shift without the fairies. Oh, bless you. Thank you, E. I'm going to try, especially this week with Halloween coming up. I'll let you guys know what they have planned, and hopefully I can get through. But they want me to do something very Halloweenish, in that they would like me to do goblins and trolls and even banshees. They want me to bring in the darker kinds of fairies, and goblins are saying right now, but we're not dark. So I believe it'll be goblins, trolls, banshees, oh my, something like that for the title. It'll be a lot of fun. But it really will kind of tie in with today and let people know that there are fairies that people consider dark from mythology and legends, and they are not. The goblins who are coming through right now and have wanted me to give their own special, video are saying we are of love and of the heart. So be aware of that. All right. So this is our first card reading. Everything is okay. And now we're going to go on to the next card right now. And we'll see what comes up. We have two together coming up. Interesting. Summer. Now, I'm going to say that this is not for everyone right now, but I want to see who this resonates with right now. I feel that there are more than a few people right now of this community that are going to have a major upgrade and wish come true during the summer months of 2020. So we're going to put this side by side right now with Everything's Okay. And this is the card that came up with it. Your desire is within your reach. Now, what I would like to do is bring this together with Everything's Okay. I know I say that too. I agree. We need this message. We have been dealing with a lot. Moonlight Awakening, I agree with you. And Holistic Fan, yes, yay to the Halloween stories. Please know that everything you're going through right now is for a purpose, and that we are being divinely prepared, each of us in our own time frame, for this. The desire, the very thing that you've been brought here to do, is literally within your reach. And what Morgen is coming through with right now, she said, put down the cards so they can see you, and I'll pick them up again in a few minutes. She says that this month has been a month of extreme energy, and I know we're all aware of that. Your desire for Carrie Cottage. I love that. Bless you, dear one. And I love Morgen too. She's so beautiful. She says that these energies are the time for you to put in action what you desire most, especially if it is in alignment with your divine purpose. And I feel right now that 99.9% of you, everything that you are desiring right now that comes to your mind is 99% in line with your purpose. I just feel it. The energy is so strong. She is saying if you take a step forward this month in October and literally move toward that, the energies propel you forward. Now, once we reach the evening of the 31st, we have retrograde start. So it has to be now, between now and the 31st, okay? They're telling me you can still get some things done on the 31st, but when it goes between 31st and the 1st, that kind of evening time into the morning, wow, the fire fairies are literally taking my flame up to here right now. They're saying that energy is potentially so strong it will push you through to achieving, all right? So please take this to heart, dear ones. I am too. They literally have me waiting right now. I am primed for an audition in New York City for a show. And I'm waiting for that literally to walk through that doorway right now. So now I will continue sending you videos, even from New York, but I've told you from some time I'm moving there. So it's coming really fast. All right. Once again, Morgan's going back to the energies right now. Okay. She's saying you have to take a step forward, even if it's a baby step. For some people, this can be creating your business cards. If you haven't already done this, it can be you going out to speak to people. And you don't have to have a huge following. It can be you literally talking one-to-one to someone. It can be you speaking to a group of friends about this. It can be you doing one thing to show the divine, your guides, your higher self, the angels, the fairies, that you are serious about this thing that you have been sent to do. Take that step, everyone. I am counseling you from Avalon. They are like, do it. All right. And he said, show these again. Everything's okay. Your desires within your reach. Now the summer one, as I said, I believe is for certain people. I'm getting, for me, my move will be solidified way before that, but I definitely have things that are coming up in the summer. Now let's qualify that with another card. Let's see what comes next. I have a beautiful feather that's coming in. We have a barred owl that's floating into our fairy reading right now. And of course, barred owls are about communication, so this is very magical. All right, so here comes the next one. Woohoo! For people on our channel, spiritual teacher. All right, here's the message. Got it. All right. Wow. So for many of you, your desire is so close. You have to do what Morgan said this month before the evening of the 31st. Make your move. Move forward some clear, determined way so the energies can meet you and propel you forward. Now, there are a group of you that are coming full into spiritual teacher mode. Bless you all. All right. This is where this comes in. I see many of you starting. Some of you have already long started in this, but some of you are really going to move forward. And they're showing the summer months as when you have really achieved a major goal in this, the spiritual teaching mode. Bless everyone that is taking that route. All right, traditionally when I do a fairy reading, there are 5 cards, so we're going to go one more. So I'm asking Morgan and his sisters for a final card for everyone on this channel. And let's see what comes up. Oh my goodness. I should have taken the one that flashed. There was one that flashed out, but all right, this is once again for certain people. It's not going to be for everyone. This is the Sun card. Oh, wow. Okay, I'm getting the message in. So this is for some of you that have a young person in your life. It can be truly a son. It can also be someone that's a friend that you're working with, a young man. But they're saying, look at sun, and take that as S-U-N. So not only are we getting a message in for all of the suns associated with the people of this channel, they're also bringing in a message of the Sun Fae at the same time. So the dual message is we need more time outside, even if you're cold like we are right now. Take time to walk out into the sun. If you have a young son or an adult son, bring them along if you can. But there are sun codes coming in right now that we need to incorporate into our being. And they're saying that is the important message from this particular card being drawn. Now I'm going to reach into Morgen and the sisters to make sure, what about sons of people that are watching right now? She's just continuing with the same thought process that the more these young men can be brought out into nature, into the sun, so they can realize their connection to the divine through nature, through the nature spirits. But they're showing over and over again the sun and the sun codes coming in. And if you could see my candle flame right now, it's going up like this. Bless the fire fairies for that right now. All right. Anything else, dear ones, I'm asking? They're wanting you with this roller coaster ride. They're bringing me back to everything's okay again. To be as positive as you can and keep throughout the tests knowing that you are being moved through these tests for a purpose, so that your energy is going higher and higher and higher on the scale. This is not to say that there are not days when you feel like a dark fairy, but allow those moments to be fewer and fewer, because the more you step into these October energies and allow them to move you forward with positive movement forward, the faster you reach your desired goal right here. So I think this is a fabulous card reading for all of you. They're saying take the top of the deck right now. Oh my God. Your wish is granted, everybody. That is the most awesome card to receive. That was the top of the deck. Oh my God. All right. So for everyone here, literally, do what they've been telling you. I know. Can you feel the love? It is amazing right now coming from the fairy realm. They want you to achieve your goals. And they're saying, according to your belief, your wish is fulfilled. So I want to end this YouTube video with this beautiful card. I want you to all realize that you can fulfill your wish. Bless you too, dear one. And they're saying, remind everyone about everythingfairy.co. You can come visit me there. I am doing fairy readings, so if you want a personal one, you can sign up for one there. You can also check out my new novel, The Adventures of Maid Marian, which is filled with fairies. She works with fairies. She's a healer. That's on there. You can get a signed copy. And of course, you can connect with Morgen, start studying with Sacred Avalon through donation. She's saying talk about the Morgen of Avalon books, so they're all on there. And you can take any of the fairy classes there as well. So thank you so much, dear one, and everyone that participated today. Bless you all. I love you all. I honor you. I'm so grateful to have you on the channel. And truly, if you know people that can benefit from this channel and the things we do here, please send them my way. Like I said, this following week, I'm definitely going to be doing a goblin video. They are so ready, and we're going to work with a lot of the more Halloween kind of fairies. So we'll have a lot of fun with that. So once again, thank you everyone for tuning in, and blessings to you all. Have a really magical day. Farewell from Morgen, she's saying, from the sisters, and indeed all the fairies. Bye.